we're going to go back to Google Plus, do another hangout. And Hari is coming back to join us. The man you see right there, that is Jason Rosenbaum of the St. Louis Beacon. You know Hari from earlier, Srinivasan. I'm so proud of pronouncing your name correctly. I'm going to say it as many times. Okay, good. And Joe Manis, also from the St. Louis Beacon. I'll start with our two Beacon reporters, and Hari, jump in anytime here too, all three of you. We talked a little bit about big data with Hari earlier. Talk about big money. There was $6 billion spent in the 2012 election overall. Did you see that in Missouri, and did it have an impact?
You saw it early.
You saw
maybe 10 or 12 million early. But after the infamous legitimate rape comment by Todd Akin, all the outside money left. So then it became more of money between the two campaigns. We're talking about the U.S. Senate race.
The Senate race, yes.
And Claire McCaskill had raised far more. Overall, she'd raised over 12 million. She had about half of that by this summer. Akin never really had more than $1 million at a time. At the end, there was a little outside money that came in, about $1.5 million for him, but some of that was spent on robocalls. Some of it was spent on ads.
But not just the Senate race. Jason, what about did you see big money in Missouri elsewhere?
Yeah, that's an understatement, actually. Missouri has a distinction of being one of the few states that doesn't have campaign finance limits. And that means that somebody could give hundreds of thousands of dollars. When I say somebody, I mean one individual. And that happened numerous times throughout the election. But what we found was that just because somebody got a huge donation from somebody didn't mean that they were going to win an election. Two good examples are Brad Lager in the lieutenant governor Republican primary got a lot of money from a small circle of individuals, but still lost to incumbent Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder. And you also had an instance with the Secretary of State's race where retired financier Rex Sinquefield gave a lot of money to Republican Shane Scholler, but he was still defeated narrowly by Jason Kander. But there were other examples. For example, Sinquefield gave a lot of money to Attorney General Chris Koster, and he ended up easily beating Ed Martin, who received a lot of money from David Humphreys of TAMCO and lost a lot too. So my point being that big money can certainly help, but it's not necessarily a decisive factor.
Hari, what about on the national?
Did you guys have a lot of super PAC? Did you guys have a bunch of super PAC money come into your state? I know it wasn't a battleground state per se, but was there a lot of outside spending?
Only for the U.S. Senate race. The stuff that Jason was talking about was just for our statewide candidates because there's no donation limits for the statewide candidates.
So that makes super PACs unnecessary because a lot of times they just donate directly to the candidates. That doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means that they aren't needed as much from a tactical standpoint, like in the federal level.
Yeah, right. But as I mentioned before, on the federal contest, they spent about at least $10 million against McCaskill early, but then they bowed out after Akin's rape comment, and they, for the most part, didn't come back. Karl Rove didn't come back. He was only going to come back if Akin dropped out and there was a replacement Republican, and there never was.
You know, what's also interesting is that comment it went viral on the internet. You didn't have to pay for that ad. That was a piece of, beautifully shot video. All of a sudden, the next morning, there it is in your Facebook stream, your Twitter feed, or really even across old-fashioned newspapers. It's kind of like that there's no bad publicity except publicity, but it was out there, and not a dime had to be spent on it.
Yeah, I will never forget the day coming back from celebrating my wife's birthday in Forest Park and looking at my phone and seeing how unbelievably viral that comment had gotten. I got 10 or 15 emails on a Sunday, which meant that, it had taken up another level, especially on places like Twitter and just everywhere else in the social media world. I'm sure Joe can attest because it kind of rocked her vacation over in rural Indiana as well. So,
what about the negativity in the ads? That was almost like running a negative ad on yourself, I suppose. Did it seem any more mean-spirited in 2012, nationally or locally, for any of you?
Well, locally, I would say it was a bit more nasty. than in recent elections. But I've seen nastier. I have seen nastier elections. 20 years ago, there was an ad that had one of the gubernatorial candidates morphing into like horrible monsters that the other side put up. So I've seen nasty before.
Hari, nationally, would you say?
You know, when you think about now post-election, we're hearing about how much President Obama's campaign initially spent on those $10 to $50 million to help define Mitt Romney as a Bain Capital guy.
Right.
Well, when you think about all of that money spent versus the 47% comment, which is a piece of video from a hidden cell phone, right? I mean, think about, that could be probably the most consequential piece of video in this election if it helped somebody make up their mind about Mitt Romney one way or the other.
And one thing that I found especially interesting is these super PACs, which were basically created just to run negative ads with effectively unlimited donations, they weren't particularly successful in many instances. There was tons of money spent on the Illinois congressional race in the 12th district to help Jason Plummer from a lot of these super PACs. And he ended up losing pretty decisively to Bill Enyart in what I felt was a nastier contest than pretty much any I saw in Missouri.